What if the most powerful weapon in the world is not a missile, a tank, but a blocked payment, a frozen bank account, or a silent restriction inside the global financial system? Something that can choke an economy without an explosion, weaken a government without an invasion, and force political surrender without a single soldier crossing a border. Stay with me, because by the end of this, the idea of war itself may look very different, and you may realize that some of the most important battles of our time are already happening in plain sight, just not where most people are looking. When most of us think about conflict, we picture front lines. We imagine maps with arrows, cities under attack, soldiers moving, aircraft overhead. That is the visual language of war. But the 21st century has introduced something colder, quieter, and often more effective. Economic warfare, the use of money, trade, finance, technology, supply chains, insurance, shipping, and market access as weapons of pressure. It does not always create dramatic footage, which is why it is easy to underestimate. But ask yourself this: if a country cannot sell its exports, buy critical components, move money, insure cargo, or access advanced technology, how long can it function as normal? Globalization was sold as efficiency. Countries would specialize, trade, and grow richer together. But hidden inside that success was a dangerous side effect: dependence. The more efficient the system became, the more fragile it also became. A chain built for speed is rarely built for stress, and in geopolitics, stress always arrives. To understand how this works, stop looking only at borders and start looking at networks. Look at where money clears, where ships refuel, where insurance is issued, where semiconductors are made, where key software is licensed, where industrial inputs are refined, and where trade is priced. Those are the real pressure points. A country can have a large army and still be vulnerable if its banking system depends on foreign channels, if its factories need imported chips, or if its trade routes run through choke points controlled by someone else. This is where the United States still holds enormous power. It is the backbone of a huge share of international trade and finance. That means access to dollar-based transactions, American banks, and the wider financial plumbing connected to them can become a strategic advantage. If Washington restricts access, the effects can reach far beyond its own borders. A sanctioned country might still have oil, gas, factories, and ports. But if it struggles to move money, pay suppliers, insure cargo, or settle trade, pain arrives quickly. And this is not theoretical. The world has already watched major economies get squeezed by sanctions, export controls, and financial restrictions. Sovereignty is not just about controlling your own territory. It is also about how much of your economy depends on systems other countries can influence, interrupt, or shut off. But here's where the story gets more interesting. The United States is not the only country that understands leverage. China spent years building a different kind of power. It focused on manufacturing scale, processing capacity, export strength, and strategic positions inside supply chains. China became the place where the world's products are assembled, refined, or finished. Not the ability to freeze money, but the ability to slow production, limit exports, restrict inputs, and make entire industries nervous. So now the global system is layered. Financial power in one place, industrial power in another, technological control somewhere else. Europe adds regulatory power. Shipping choke points add geographic power. Energy exporters add resource power. The result is a world where economic conflict does not flow in a single direction. States hold different tools, and every serious government is trying to reduce exposure while increasing leverage. Take semiconductors. These tiny chips power smartphones, vehicles, data centers, precision weapons, and almost every advanced system. Yet the most advanced manufacturing is concentrated in a small number of locations. That makes semiconductors not just a business story, but a geopolitical one. A disruption in one part of that network can echo through the global economy within weeks. Cars get delayed, electronics become more expensive, military procurement becomes harder. Suddenly, a technical supply issue becomes a strategic crisis. The more digital and advanced the economy becomes, the more it depends on physical things: factories, ports, undersea cables, warehouses, clean rooms, transformers, ships, rare materials, and power grids. We talk about virtual worlds and cloud computing as if everything has become weightless. It is not. The cloud has a very heavy basement, and if someone controls the basement, they can pressure everything built above it. That is why tariffs, sanctions, export bans, technology controls, and investment restrictions matter so much now. They are the architecture of modern pressure. A tariff can raise costs. A technology ban can slow innovation. A sanctions package can isolate banks and firms. An export restriction can starve a rival industry of critical inputs. None of these moves looks like traditional warfare on television, but the consequences can be strategic, immediate, and severe. If you are still with me, subscribe now and tell me in the comments which tool seems more powerful in today's world. Control over money, control over technology, or control over trade routes. There is no simple answer, and that is exactly why this new kind of conflict is so hard to manage. Now imagine these pressures happening at the same time. Trade restrictions tighten. Shipping insurance becomes harder to secure. A rival state blocks access to key technology. A financial channel closes. Investors panic. Manufacturers start stockpiling. Prices jump. Governments issue reassuring statements no one fully believes. Still no missiles. Still no invasion. But the economy is already taking hits, and leaders are already calculating how much pain they can absorb before they have to change course. That is the real power of economic warfare. It sits in the gray zone between peace and war. It allows countries to apply pressure without crossing the threshold of open military conflict. That makes it attractive. It is cheaper, quieter, and often easier to justify politically. It also creates ambiguity. Was this retaliation? Was it regulation? Was it national security? Was it just trade policy? In modern geopolitics, those lines blur very quickly. There is also a historical twist here that many people miss. Economic warfare is not new. Naval blockades, embargoes, and resource denial have shaped conflicts for centuries. What is new is the scale and precision. In the past, cutting off trade was blunt and slow. Today it can be targeted, data-driven, and devastatingly efficient. A handful of restrictions on banking, software, advanced chips, or shipping services can hit critical nodes instead of entire populations. It is still coercion. It is just smarter, faster, and harder to see. And yet there is another twist. These tools do not just weaken rivals, they also expose the weaknesses of the countries using them. Sanctions can push targets to build alternatives. Export controls can encourage domestic substitution. Trade barriers can raise costs for everyone. Pressure creates counterpressure. That means economic warfare is powerful but not clean. It can hurt the attacker, the target, and the wider system all at once. In a deeply connected world, economic weapons rarely stay in one place. This is why the next phase may be even more dangerous. As countries realize how vulnerable they are redesigning the global economy around resilience, redundancy, and strategic control. Supply chains are being shortened, duplicated, or shifted. Governments want friendlier suppliers. Companies want backup routes. States want domestic capacity in critical sectors. That sounds rational, and in many ways it is. But it also means the world is becoming less open, more suspicious, and more fragmented. The old dream was that trade would make conflict less likely. The new fear is that trade itself has become the battlefield. So what happens next? Probably not one dramatic moment that announces a new age. More likely a steady deepening of the system we already see. More export controls, more sanctions, more industrial subsidies, more financial pressure, more competition over shipping, technology, energy, and materials. A world where countries prepare not only for military attack, but for economic isolation. A world where resilience becomes a national security obsession. A world where the strongest state may not be the one with the biggest army, but the one whose economy can survive being squeezed. And that is why this topic matters so much. Economic warfare changes the logic of conflict. It rewards control over systems, not just territory. It makes ports, payment rails, chip fabs, industrial standards, and reserve currencies part of the battlefield. It turns interdependence into vulnerability and vulnerability into leverage. Most importantly, it means the next great confrontation may begin so quietly that millions of people will not realize it has started until prices rise, factories stall, and governments start acting with the urgency usually reserved for war. If this changed the way you see power, like the video, subscribe for more and tell me what you think. Are economic weapons replacing traditional warfare? Or are they simply softening the ground before something bigger? Because the answer to that question may shape not just the next conflict, but the future of the global system itself.